You're going spending roughly the same amount of time suffering. Yet one is this horrible, horrible experience that will probably traumatize you, and then the other one is actually an experience that you would be proud of for the rest of your life. So this brings up a very interesting point about pain, and it's that the experience itself is not what determines suffering. It's the meaning that we create around the experience. It's ultimately whether we suffer from something or not is determined by the narratives that we create in our minds to explain that experience. And this is really important because ultimately we're always choosing what narratives we use to explain our experiences. In every moment we are determining the meaning of our experiences and of our pain. And when we feel as though we've chosen the struggle in a certain way, that's what gives our lives a sense of meaning. And so this choice is always in front of us in every moment. Sometimes it's very hard to see. Sometimes we don't want to accept that we have that choice, but it's always there. Usually around this point somebody says, well, screw you, Mark, I didn't choose my problems. You don't understand. You don't know what I've been through. I'm like, well, yeah. I don't. But what's important is that even if you didn't choose your specific problem, you have made choices that have led up to the context of the problem. I'll use an example from my own life. So my mother-in-law, bless her heart, love her very much. So my wife is Brazilian, and her family Brazilian is super Catholic, and we have these very intense Christmases where the whole extended family gets together and you spend the whole day eating, and it's a good time. And but the problem is that in my wife's family, there's that one person. I feel like every family has that one person that you're kind of, well, nobody likes. But, their families, they still got to come over, you still got to invite them. And it's like, all right, well, you just kind of deal with them. So, my wife's family, they have this person. And this person would come to Christmas, and for years and years and years, she would kind of ruin everything. She would start fights with people, she would get drunk and yell at people, and it started to become a problem. And so my wife went to her mother, and she said, look, you're choosing to invite her. You need to stop inviting her. And my mother-in-law said, but I can't do anything. I have no choice. My wife said, of course you have a choice. Just tell her not to come. And my mother-in-law said, no, but it's Christmas. You have to invite family. So my wife said, well, you're choosing to believe that on Christmas you have to invite your family, so you are still, in a sense, choosing to invite this person. To which my mother-in-law said, but everybody invites their family. I didn't decide that you have to invite your family. It's not my fault. To which my wife said, well, you're choosing to believe that everybody invites you. You get the point. Nothing was solved that day. The family member still comes to Christmas. But I think the point is true. Is that even if she didn't choose the problems that were happening at these family events, she was choosing to put herself in the context of those problems. There's a whole string of choices that led her into allowing those problems to exist. Another objection I often get is, but wait, what if I'm a legit victim? What if I get hit by a car? What if I get cancer? What if somebody close to me dies? I didn't choose that. But still, even though you don't choose your loss in life, you get to choose what your life means. And when you choose what your loss means, it grants you power over it. There's this really cool new area of psychology that's called post-traumatic growth. And everybody's heard of PTSD and how trauma messes us up, but what's fascinating is that people who experience traumatic events, really only a small minority of them actually suffer from things like PTSD. What actually many more of them experience is what's becoming known as post-traumatic growth. It's people who go through these dark and painful periods of their life, and it allows them to reevaluate what they're choosing to care about, what's important to them, and then they actually come out of it a much better person. It was interesting when I was pitching the idea for Cell Art to publishers in New York. I was taking all these meetings and meeting with editors and at all these different companies, and it was funny because a lot of these editors they didn't get it at all. They thought I basically just wanted to like write a Tony Robbins book with the F word on the cover, And they're like, sounds great, let's do it. And I'm like, no. There's a philosophy behind this. And as we were meeting with all these different publishers, I was starting to get frustrated. And then I remember I went into HarperCollins and I met my editor, Luke Dempsey, for the first time. And he walked into the room and he put the proposal on the table and he said, I'm a cancer survivor. It's the best thing that ever happened to me, and I'm going to publish your book. And from that moment, I was like, he gets it. He gets it. I don't care what the money is, what the numbers are. Like, he's the only one who gets it. This brings us to the most important question of your life. So if we're always experiencing problems and always struggling, and we're always choosing the meaning around our problems and how we interpret our problems, then that ultimately leads us to the most important question in our lives, which is, what struggles do you want in your lives? Because no matter what you do, you're going to have pain and setbacks and challenges. If you try to live a comfortable life that's always easy, that's going to be a challenge and a struggle. If you try to live a life that is isolated and cut off from everybody, that is going to be full of challenge and setbacks. If you try to be connected to everybody and be very open and social, that is going to have challenges and setbacks. Everything you can ever desire requires challenge and setbacks. So the question becomes not what success do you want, but what challenges and setbacks do you want? Because ultimately that determines more about who you are. Because let's be honest, we all want the same things. Everybody in this room wants the same things. We all want to be successful. We all like money. We all want to have good relationships. We all want to be happy. I mean, it's boring, right? There's nothing different about that. What makes each person in here unique and individual is what pain we like, is what the certain way that we like to suffer. The thing that makes you good at your job and makes other people not good at it is that you have found ways to deal with those challenges extremely well. Because to get good at anything, we have to love the associated pain. And I think this is what most self-help and success advice kind of misses, is everybody's focused on the goal, on the result. You want to make $1 million. All right, do X, Y, Z. Nobody stops and thinks about, do you want the sacrifices required to make $1 million? Do you want the pain that's associated with a high-powered career? Do you want to have to give up free time and relationships to achieve certain goals? I didn't always want to be an author. I actually started writing, I guess, pretty late. I didn't start writing seriously until I was like 26 or 27. Originally, I wanted to be a musician, and I even went to music school. I studied jazz guitar, which probably sounds like just a bunch of hippies sitting around smoking cigarettes, but music school is actually very intense. Has anybody here seen the movie Whiplash? It's an amazing film. If you haven't seen it, absolutely go see it. Music school is no joke. The program that I entered had a 13% graduation rate. 87% of people who got accepted to the program never finished it. And I made it 1 year. And I remember I was practicing guitar probably 6 to 7 hours a day. I was going to classes 3 to 4 hours a day. I was playing in ensembles and bands. And I remember about 8 or 9 months into it, I was just disgusted with guitar. I didn't want to see a guitar. I didn't want to touch a guitar. I didn't want to hear music. I just wanted to go be somewhere silent and alone and like put my hand in a bucket of ice because I was so sick of playing. And I remember I went into a guitar lesson one day and I tried to play something and my teacher just looked at me and he said, "Stop. You know what your problem is?" And I was like, "What?" He said, "You just don't practice enough." I was like, God, I'm done with this. And I remember there was this one guy in our program, his name was Chris McQueen, and he was like the one guy in the program we all knew, okay, Chris is gonna make it, you know, we're probably screwed, but Chris is gonna make it. And I kind of reached this desperate point, and I saw Chris sitting alone at lunch one day in the cafeteria, and I was like, I went and sat across from him, and I was like, "Hey man, can I just ask you a few questions?" Because I was like, clearly this guy knows something I don't, and I need to find out what that is. And so I sat down with him, and I started asking him all these questions, you know, like, what's your morning routine like? What's your practice schedule? How do you prioritize the songs that you work on? How do you stay motivated to keep working through, keep practicing through all the problems? And he just kind of looked at me and gave me like the most blasé, boring answers. He didn't tell me anything really. Everything he said was very obvious, and I just realized that he had no idea what I was talking about. So I was like, okay, I think I'm gonna quit music school. And so I quit music school, and about 6 or 7 years later I started a website. And this was back in like 2008, 2009, and back in 2008, 2009, if you had a website and you wanted people to come to your website, you had the blog. Blogs were like the cool new thing in 2008. And so I was like, all right, I'll start this blog thing. So I started blogging, and I thought it was fun. I'm like, this is cool. It's a nice way to like pretend like I'm working on my business even though I'm just writing fun stuff. And I started writing these huge posts that were like 10, 20 pages long. Sure enough, I started getting a lot of traffic, and within a couple of years, my business started making money, and I'm like, sweet. I'm building an internet business. And I remember after a few years, I started going to these conferences, for internet business conferences. And I'd be hanging out outside the exhibit room, and people started coming up to me, and they were like, "Hey man, can I ask you some questions? Like, I really like your blog, but can I ask for some advice?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And they're like, "What's your morning routine like? What's your writing schedule?" And I found myself giving the same exact boring answers that Chris McQueen gave me. I don't have a writing routine. I don't get up early. Like, who gets up early? Oh, you do? Okay. And these people would be so disappointed because they thought I knew something that they didn't. And what I realized, it took me a long time to figure this out, but Chris McQueen loves sitting in a room by himself playing the same song for 6 hours until he gets it perfect. That made me miserable. That was not my pain. I did not enjoy that pain. He enjoyed it. And that's why he has 2 Grammys today, and I haven't touched a guitar in 5 years. I love rewriting the same paragraph 7 different times. It's just fun to me. I just keep going over it over and over. Most people hate that. Most people, it drives them absolutely crazy. That's why I'm a writer, and a lot of people aren't. It's ultimately, I think, as individuals, we're each well adapted to some sort of pain in our lives. There's something that we are all able to tolerate or bear that most other people are not. And that is our greatest advantage in the world. That is ultimately what determines where our successes come from, is what pain do we enjoy sustaining. I've started doing a lot of kind of corporate events, and I included this slide